everyone and welcome back. Just a reminder, I'm joined by Robert Sinclair, AMI Chief Exec, and we're talking all things industry, but we're now going to focus a little bit more on the new build space. But before we do, I want to just come on to the affordability piece. It's clear that it's a massive challenge. The way rates have gone, inflation. Do you feel that lenders are being innovative enough? And what does that actually look like? We see that word bandied around a lot. So what does that look like to you as well?
I think innovative enough is an interesting challenge. If I go way back to when I was a bit younger and a bit more hair, you had a situation where you had low start, or you come in a much lower repayment and convert and capitalise some of that interest and look at a different way of doing this to make it affordable. The regulators kind of made that hard because of changes to the affordability rules that sit within post-mortgage market review, but also the way that the PRA might assess capital where they're not seeing all of that covered. And the kind of interest-only view that you might be able to run that for a period of time is harder for a lender from capital position. Therefore, almost the benefits that you might get by making that change are killed for the lender because of how they have to allocate capital. That's not a great place for us to be. So I think we have to have better discussions with our regulators in the broadest sense about how lenders can be more innovative and not to count against them. Okay. So, but I think we are going to see interesting more products come in, like the Perena type longer term products that might be closer aligned interest rates, given where rates now are, than where they might have been if they come into the market where rates were very low. So I think we are going to see opportunity for people to look at this differently. But I think we have to be open to think about very different types of products as advisors to help get people over the line. That's going to make advice much more important, I think, to get people away from thinking purely of that 2 and 5 year fix, but a product that might be a 25-year product, but have got break clauses in it and how you can use that. So we're going to have to think through our compliance functions, how those work and how those interact in the advice process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So continuing on the theme of affordability, affordable housing, do you think that's going to be really key now as we move into 2024 for first-time buyers, giving them the opportunity to own their own home?
If I look at, and having talked to the Labour Party about what they might do, they've set this ambitious target of 1.5 million new houses over a 5-year term. Now, if we look at what build starts going to be this year, if they came into power, you'd have to look at this as a 200,000, 250,000, 300,000, 300,000, 400,000 over the time to make that target. So you have to see escalation at a rapid rate of the number of builds, but from a very low base. I think a large part of that will not be 4 or 5 bedroom houses. A large part of that is much more likely to be smaller properties on a shared ownership basis, perhaps. I think they're going to invest significantly in looking at shared ownership as a tenure of choice, as opposed to be a tenure of no options other than that. Okay. So I think we'll see a political shift where they're going to encourage through the planning system the building of much more smaller type units to get people on the housing ladder, but they're going to change their expectation of consumers around that at the same time. So we'll see some quite interesting push-pull around that, I think, politically, if Labour manage to achieve majority at the next election.
Okay, so you mentioned shared ownership then. Do you think that is going to be a key player, or the key player?
I've been working on a project for the last 12 months with Lloyds Banking Group and the Leeds Building Society, where we've been trying to work out how we change the perception of shared ownership. So what's going to happen in the next few months is there's going to be a new shared ownership council created to try to pull the housing association together with lenders and other participants in the industry, particularly government, to try to work out how we deliver a new set of standards for the shared ownership industry, in the same way we have seen new standards being brought into the new build sector. So we'll have this council hopefully working in partnership to develop better standards that also talk to government about the affordability thresholds, how things are assessed in terms of affordability, how that works versus the rental costs, and how we will easily manage, perhaps how we get changes to allow staircasing to not be, well, to make it simpler and more clear to allow it to happen, so that when people do want to exit, it's done in an easy way, not the complex way it feels like at the moment, which damages the reputation of the sector.
Okay, so you mentioned perception there, and I think that is a massive part of shared ownership.
It is.
How do you feel the public's perception is, and how do we see that the council sounds fantastic, but how do we continue to change the perception, and and what role do we have in helping them?
I think we as a sector have to own some of that. So we probably leave it as a last resort or tuck it in a corner somewhere, and we almost, it's a bit sometimes like how some people deal with protection, which is it's the after sale, not the upfront option. So we don't ever talk about it or see it as something the customer should be considering. If they're in the margins, we probably almost keep it in the back pocket or never raise it at all. So we've got a responsibility to raise knowledge and understanding of it across the intermediary sector, and AMI will do work around that, I think, over the next 12 months. There's the other part of this, which is the responsibility to not talk it down, because I think we're probably all guilty of thinking that. There's another element that says that it's also the last bit that gets built on any housing estate that builders do. So I think not just here, but we as an industry and big players like Lloyds Banking Group have to have words with their builder partners to say this shouldn't be the last bit you build almost in the corner out the way. So there's planning issues around this about how that works and how it's perceived that we need to think through as well to make it much more something that's seen as a positive option, not the last desperate option of anything that's being done.
And you did mention earlier about choice. At the moment, it can be the only place customers go, because the only way for them to get on the ladder, which I think is probably a fair reflection of probably how we view it in a lot of ways. Do you think we're ever going to get to a point where we will see customers choose to do it?
I think if the choices are painted better around pure rental versus shared ownership and the benefits of tenure that gives you, yes, it's got responsibilities around it, versus full ownership, and it's seen as in that order of hierarchy, whereas it's always seen as buy, rent, then shared ownership. We need to think about changing that hierarchy in terms of people's mindset and then talk more about the benefits that shared ownership can give you as opposed to all the negatives. That's not to say we shouldn't talk about the issues and the responsibilities that come with it, but we need to think about the language and the structure and how we present that better.
Okay, cool, thank you. The last bit I want to cover off is it's clear we're in a challenging market. There's a lot for brokers to think about. How do you see brokers now, their level of importance as we move into 2024? Is it greater than ever?
I struggle to work out how a consumer could think of coming to this market as self-selecting, because for most people, if you've got a 9 to 5 job and it's relatively straightforward and you're buying a 3 or 4 bedroomed Barratt house, David Wilson house along an estate, is relatively straightforward. A lot of it is not that. Most people have complex jobs, complex incomes. Buying a property that might be non-standard or might have been changed in some way, that needs somebody to talk with also through, navigate through the maze of the whole conveyancing process that's still broken. That we need to be in a better place around all of that. Also, anybody who thinks that they can self-select and buy and not have proper discussions about the whole financial plan, i.e. their budget, the affordability assessment and getting underneath the skin of that and understanding the customer's income and their expenditure and talking to them about that is a fundamental part of advice for me. And the only person who can do that is the mortgage broker. I look forwards as well, where if we genuinely, and whilst the government has changed the agenda, what we are going to see during 24 and 25 is the PR and the FCA begin to impose greater responsibilities on the green agenda. Now, without wishing to be rude in any way to my estate agency colleagues, I'm not sure that the average estate agent will have a great conversation about the ability to retrofit a house or the green credentials of a house. I think brokers are going to have to become better and more informed around that as well. Therefore, the general level of knowledge that a broker has about the housing market, the green market, and the mortgage market, pulling that together in a great conversation with a customer that they can have real empathy with and have grown-up conversations with about their background is where we add value. And where we add that value of advice, then we can genuinely command a fee that we're actually worth. Because we tend to talk ourselves down as being mortgage brokers. We are not mortgage brokers. We are advisors of customers looking to commit to a fundamentally huge financial transaction. Therefore, we should take pride in the professionalism of what we do and work really hard to evidence why we're worth every penny we earn out of that.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more, Robert. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you very much for your time today. And that brings to a close this episode of In Talks with JD. And thank you, Robert, again for joining me. And it's clear that the road ahead is going to be bumpy. However, what is even more clear is that brokers have a bigger part to play than ever. If you enjoyed that episode and want to check out some others that we've done, then visit our YouTube channel on the link listed below.